All right, folks, I am John Arnold. If you don't know me, Chief Inspiration Officer of the 7-Minute Life. I want to welcome you to the call today. We call this The Life You Deserve because we're going to give you a snapshot. You're going to get to see folks just like yourself, how they have made some time management transitions. I'll go into the particulars of that in just a moment. You are in the right place today if, and I think this is where most of us are, I'd love to see you kind of raise your hand in the chat box or let me know which one of these resonates for you. You are in the right place today if, come on, why is my, there we go. If you're running ragged and you want to be running strong, and what I mean by that is we meet a lot of folks who, I heard one person kind of put it this way, they said, I just drive myself all day long trying to get to the end of the day. I go to bed exhausted and I'm just waiting for the weekends, and I would love to have time for some personal things, but it never happens. So that's running ragged. And I think what you'd much rather be doing is getting your work done, feeling good about your work, being able to step away from it at the end of the workday, go home, actually have some time for some personal goals and pursuits, and be able to enjoy the weekend rather than use it as a time to catch up on all the things that have been neglected, or just sit down on the couch because you can't do anything. Anybody relate with that? If you can, you are definitely in the right place. Also, maybe you have tried planners, and who knows how many other tools. Yesterday, I was talking with Susan in our group, and she said, yeah, I've been using calendars since the 80s, but she didn't see real transformation until the last couple of years, because you can have all the right tools, but there are some mindset shifts that you really need to make for those tools to make any difference for you. And I think that's one of the things you'll get a glimpse into. Also, if you have been setting goals, maybe you do resolutions or you set goals, but you can't, but your life's upside down anyways. Like, you set these goals, you think, okay, I'm going to get organized and you do this, and for a very short season, man, you're on it. You're awesome. And then things rapidly deteriorate and you just can't seem to sustain it. I think you're going to see why that may be happening today in people's stories. And here's the other thing. You keep learning, but you just don't seem to make progress. We have a lot of folks who are here on webinar after webinar, and I am really glad you are. But what we want to see is we want to make sure you're making progress. So, and then lastly, I think just you're in the right place, because if any of these fit you, and it looks like some of you, it definitely is. Yeah, I'm seeing people go, that's me. I see it. Yep. You're going to benefit from here today. I think partially it'll be inspiring because you're going to see just average folks like you and me who have applied some of these things to have some pretty significant shifts in their life. And so here's what I want you to listen for. This is really important. And then we'll talk with folks. Transforming your life isn't some kind of superpower that only certain people have, okay? One of my fears or concerns when you come to these webinars is that it's easy because you see Allyson and I as time management experts, and we are. We've earned our street credentials, if you will, with time management and organization. But it's not because we have some special gifts for time management or special gifts for being organized. In fact, Jerry, which you don't know, is my sister. She can testify that I was not born with organizational genes. So I've not been an organized, I've been a methodical person in many ways my whole life, I think. But time management, organization was not something I was naturally gifted with. I'm not sure anybody really is. It's a skill set. And I put down there in parentheses, remember my story. I won't go back over my story in detail, but when we started this series, we're at the end of a series called Time Management from Scratch. I shared a story where my life got in such disarray that my daughter, who at that time was about 3-4 years old, she was yay high. One night going into the church, she looked up at me and asked if I lived there. That's how completely messed up my priorities were. And that was a heart-wrenching moment for me. So I wasn't born this way. It's a skill set. And it's the skill set can be applied to people from widely different needs. I'll use this moment to introduce people a little bit. Angela is a mom. She got several kids. She is full on in the sandwich generation because she is a caregiver for her mother who has Alzheimer's. She does ministry. She works in ministry and gets pulled in multiple ministry directions. It's not like she just has one, but she's active in her church and she's active in other ministry and she teaches people. And so she's pulled in a zillion different directions. My sister Jerry has been in higher education at a programmatic and administrative level for a couple decades now. She has a doctorate in higher ed. And so, she is a professional and functions in a professional world on a daily basis. Susan is a wife. She is a mother. She works. She's kind of, we're getting at that cusp. I'm starting to do that too, where we can see retirement on the horizon. So our identities are shifting, which means, okay, who am I now and who am I going to be in 2 or 3 years or a year or 5 years? So we are from very different situations, but we've all used the exact same process and tools to get to a place of meaning and happiness. And then I think this is my last thing I wanted to mention because I really want you to watch for this. I do have one short thing after it. Most people, now note this, most people are going to need more than tools and more than education to make substantial, note these words, substantial and lasting change. Just about everybody on this webinar that I know who's been coming has shared wins that they have had, and they've shared progress and movement they have made. I'm going to tell you this, though. If you really want to completely move the needle, I find most people that it's not enough just to educate them, and it's not enough to just give them tool. And I'll give you a quick example out of just real life. Imagine it this way. It's like, okay, going out, you want to lose some weight at the beginning of the year. You buy the gym membership. You know exactly what you need to go when you go into that gym. And how many of you 2 months later are, 15, 20 pounds lighter and fitter? Most of us aren't. We have the education, we have the tools, but we don't make the change and we don't sustain it. That's why tools and education aren't enough. And we'll talk about how you can step. For most people, some people, you hand them a gym membership, they read a few books, boom, they're on it and they're good. That's, I think, the exception, not the rule. Last but not least, and I'm going to come back to these things at the end, all of this adds up to one very simple thing I want you to go home with today, and that's why I want you to see these people from real life examples is the process we've been sharing through this whole series when we started back with the first video about priorities and purpose and the second video about goals and the third video about having a daily action plan. Those mechanics, that process can work for you. If you walk away with nothing else, I want you to go, I can do this today. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I want to get into this. I gave you a brief glimpse into Jerry and Susan and Angela's backgrounds, and they might want to flesh it out more. And I'm going to kind of open it up. What I would love to do is would one of you be willing, and if you're not willing, I'll end up volunteering you, but would one of you be willing to say a little bit about, like, before you did a master's class a couple years ago, what was the situation you were in and kind of drove you to do that? And let's just start there. If everybody could kind of give a quick, okay, here's where I was, and this was what my time management issues were. Does anybody want to start with that? Susan will jump in there. Thank you, Susan. Woot, woot.
Yay, definitely. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. I was in a what I call a wet blanket depression, where you're just so depressed, and I was in such overwhelm that it was hard for me to reach out to somebody. We had moved from Alaska to Dallas to be a caregiver for my husband's brother. And then we had moved from Dallas to Louisiana to kind of help take care of my mother. All of our furnishings had been in Alaska for over a year waiting to move them. And so what happened is my brother-in-law passed away, my mother passed away. We got all the furniture from Alaska, from Dallas, from my mother's apartment. I was so overwhelmed, and then in a new house and trying to, nest, trying to make a home in a house. And so, that's how I was before the master class. After the master class, I was able to deal with all of this and do things like create a sunroom with plants, develop my Bible study that I'd been wanting to do for years and years and years. And finally, I was able to do that and have a prayer wall. And, it's an amazing change. And that I went from that overwhelming depression to, oh, hey, I have peace. And I think that's what it's all about.
I'm going to flag two things real quick with Susan. She can maybe comment on them a little bit more. And we'll get into some of the things in a moment that made the difference for people in that. So, but one thing that was really striking was that Susan, a week or 2 weeks ago in one of our calls, was talking about having a bad day. But then what she said was, I had a bad day, but a bad day is not that bad now. It's the bar of, I'm sure what was a good day before may be lower than what a bad day is now. So that's just really cool. When I talk about leveling up your life, that's what I'm talking about, where your norms of what are good or bad days changes. It really, really, truly changes for you. And then there's one thing, don't let me forget this, Susan. I want to talk about, she questioned whether she should be on this call yesterday. And I'm not going to go into that yet, but I don't want to forget that. It's really critical. So let me jump to either Jerry or Angela. Could you give us a little quick snippet? And then once you both have done that, we'll talk a little bit about because it's great to see where you've been and where you're coming. And I definitely want people to see that. But I'm sure people want to know, okay, that's awesome. Now, what did that? How did you do that? So Angela or Jerry, either one, you can rock, paper, scissors, or you can, who wants to jump in there? Oh, you're both muted.
All right, I'll go.
Good God. Thank you, Angela.
No problem. So when I came to 7 Minute Life, as John said, I was kind of 2 years into being a mother, but being the caregiver for a mother with Alzheimer's who had moved in with us, and trying to figure out where I fit in life, and where Angela was in that mix, realizing that a lot of my time was out of my control. And so I was really searching for something that would help me figure out how a process for going about managing my time and handling those situations where sometimes that management of time was out of my hands. One thing I was clear on was my purpose. And so what 7 Minute Life has kind of helped me do is being sure to incorporate my purpose and my values into how I manage my time and not leaving them sitting on the sideline. And so I'm still working. Like John said, we're all still working and growing. None of us have perfected it. But for me, it has allowed me to be very intentional, and it has given me a place where I can be aware where I'm working outside of my purpose and values and where I need to get back on track. So that's probably the biggest thing so far that I have realized in my life. So even when I do have those bad days or those times where I feel like I'm in that choke point, I am now able to recognize that I'm in that choke point and know that I need to go back and revisit what I'm doing.
Fantastic. Super. Jerry, you want to go ahead and jump in there too and kind of give some more snippet?
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. Yeah, so on John's slide, he talked about running ragged and you want to be running strong, or getting at the end of the day and you feel like, what the heck did I accomplish? But you know you're wore out. I was serving as director of a leadership and cultural programming department at a research technological university. And that's the way I felt, because I had a very small staff. And at the end of every day, I was kind of like, what the heck? You know I did all these things, but, then I'd be up till midnight writing a report that was also due that day. And so unlike Angela, I think I had lost my purpose. John could probably attest. I became a kind of a workaholic, and my husband would make that comment and I'd be like, well, I am the primary breadwinner and I'm trying to put a roof over your head. It was kind of weird for us, but anyways, very much a workaholic. And that's the way I entered it and defined my purpose and my values. And it became easier to use some of the tools once I did that. But in December 31st, I lost my job. And so if you're a workaholic and you lose your job, it's very easy to go, who am I now? And I had made some strides because of 7 Minutes Life in balancing before that. But I think my message to you today is it doesn't matter where you are in life, the principles will help carry you through. So it would be I bet 3 years ago, if I would have been unemployed, I would have applied for any job that I thought I was qualified for. And I've actually responded to some recruiters and said, unfortunately, that's not the type of work I'm best at doing. So my purpose is now guiding what jobs I apply for, what jobs I don't apply for, those kinds of things. So that's one of the shifts that I made, is purpose. But I think that's probably my biggest message is if you learn the tools and you engage with an accountability group, you're gonna be much better off, but the tools will transcend whatever's going on.
Sorry, I was on. Yeah, I loved what you just said about tools transcending what's going on. And it goes back to what I was saying is what we've been teaching in this webinar series, it's not circumstance dependent, it's not person dependent, and it helps you each season of life. But there are two things that I want to flag out of those, and then we can kind of go to, some of the things that helped you, maybe either tools that helped you or habits you developed that have been the things that have been really, really helpful. But I said at the beginning of this, tools and education alone aren't enough. I hope what you were kind of hearing in definitely Angela's story, she just flat out said it, I think a little bit in both Susan and Jerry's stories. The we created the tools to help you have self-awareness so that you're making conscious and deliberate choices about how you live your time, and you can get out of being reactionary. And I think one of the things that Angela was saying was really, really helpful. She mentioned the choke point. For those of you who maybe are new, we have this concept where we talk about the choke point, where we go into our day, think about this as sort of the top of the day, and we have certain things we want to get done. You know, we have our little to-do list, and our hope is all those things are going to make it down here, right? But as the day goes on, stuff starts piling in that we didn't expect. We just get hit with all these different things, and before you know it, we hit this what we call choke point. And I've had people literally say, when I know when I hit the choke point, like I have literally, it just shuts me down, or you might begin moving slower or having trouble making decisions, or that's when things just start falling out. And then before you know it, lots of these distractions that you never even saw coming or whatever, that's what end up being the end result in your day. And only one or two things you really had hoped to do get there. Well, Angela mentioned that for her, it's like the habits and the reinforcement and reinstilling of purpose and priorities. It's like it gives you some foresight. You see the choke point coming before you hit it, you know, and you can make adjustments so that you can more smoothly navigate through there and bring with you more of what you wanted. And it's that raising of self-awareness. I used to do recovery ministry for 3 years. I helped lead a ministry where we helped people with hurts, habits, or hang-ups that were making their life unmanageable. And, we talk about oftentimes in recovery ministry that people have to bottom out before they will turn around. Well, what I think all three folks here will tell you is that the more you practice these tools, the higher your bottom goes, to where we used to talk about sometimes in recovery, people who had a high bottom where they didn't have to lose their family, their job, their dog. They didn't have to be like the ultimate country western song, if you've ever heard that, they don't have to lose all those things before they can make choices and changes. What happens is you much more rapidly can respond and stave off your day collapsing, or your week collapsing, or your month collapsing, or your health collapsing, because a lot of these things translate into health issues. Susan said that she led with saying, I was in a wet blanket depression, and I was clinically in depression twice due to a failure to understand and know how to do these things. So it can impact your health and create health crises. Okay, let's go ahead and go back. I would love to hear from each of you a little bit about, so what helped you kind of make that leap? What were the things where either maybe it was an insight, it was like, oh, I never thought about this, or maybe it was a tool, because you've all been kind of different in that. So I'll just let you go in whatever order you want to go. Anybody? All right, go Jerry.
I think the very first tool that I really embraced, to be honest with you, was being realistic about breaking things down into their parts. I remember this group being very instrumental. I was planning a leadership conference, and one of the things the folks on the call told me was like, well, are you creating repeatable processes? Because, you're planning this for like the 7th time. And be realistic about how much at times. So breaking things down. When I found myself without a job, it had become second nature to break things down. So like, I live in a small town. Chances are my husband and I are relocating. So the idea of a pack rat, because I am one, getting a house ready to potentially sell, and I'm like looking around going, oh my gosh. I went, hey, wait a minute, I don't have to be overwhelmed by this. So even yesterday, I was like, when the goal is to go through one box a day, one closet a day, one drawer a day. So one of the skills that I picked up was to be realistic about what things take. And that has transcended everything. That's transcended, my job search. I haven't updated my resume. I'm not familiar with electronic. 10 years ago, the last time I looked for a job, there weren't some things that are available today. So I did schedule, okay, so I'm going to have to learn what the heck LinkedIn Jobs is and things. So one of the biggest skills that's helped me is breaking things down and being realistic about how long they take. And so that's a biggie, because then you're not overwhelmed, because if you set yourself up, I'm going to have the house ready to go on the market in X amount of time. No, this week I'm going to get this closet and repaint the dining room.
Yeah. I'm going to interject something there real quickly. Am I still live? My mic?
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned, and you didn't use this word, but I'm going to throw in there the word enough. I love the fact that you mentioned, okay, I'm going to do a box today. I'm going to do a box tomorrow. Where you had, instead of just, like on your to-do list, having work to get house ready. Well, okay, that would just roll over day after day after day after day, and you would be guilt-ridden every day because you'd never get it done. But I find one of the things for me personally there's a lot of release of guilt and a lot of release of feeling like a failure when you are setting what are actual realistic and actionable tasks for the day. And you can then get one box done, and even though 99 need to be packed, you're okay with that. And you can say, I did what I was supposed to do today, and that's awesome. Today's a win. Whereas if you don't have that, today I'm going to do a box, today I'm going to work on getting the house ready, what happens instead is, even if you do 10 boxes, you go to bed going, oh my gosh, I didn't get this done, that done, I'm a failure, boom, 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 boom. And then that deflates your energy. And when our energy gets deflated, then we move more slowly, literally. We make decisions that aren't as good, and our productivity just starts going down, and it becomes, a dog chasing its tail. So awesome. Super. Thank you, Jerry. Angela or Susan? All right. Angela, yay. Thank you.
Sure. So along with Jerry, I think that concept of breaking things down from project to micro action is critical. And for me, I'm what we call a maximizer, which is I try and go for the best at the top. And sometimes if I don't think I can reach the best, or I haven't gotten it to that perfect spot, I think I won't do it, or I won't move forward. And so being able to break things down into those micro actions helps me see, hey, I am making progress. It helps me to be able to break down that high view to smaller pieces. But very integral to that for me was the 15-minute increment and looking at that sheet, because I'm also someone who just goes and goes. And so I will try and do things during times that I know I can't do it, but I'm trying to figure out how to do it. So I think the biggest eye opener for me was taking that 15-minute increment sheet and actually color coding areas that I called non-negotiable times, where I absolutely knew it was not realistic to really plan to do anything important during those times. So if it was a time where I knew I'm going through the morning routine of getting kids ready for school and getting my mom out of the bed, I should not be trying to do work or something else during that time. Or if it's a time where I know I have to go pick someone up, I need to account for travel time for doing that, and not just the time that I'm actually picking them up. So being able to color code those things on the 15-minute increment sheet actually showed me the blank space for the time I actually have available to plan in those tasks and micro actions that I needed to work on. And that was just amazing for me to sit there, because I'm trying to do things thinking I have from, 6 in the morning to 11 at night. Well, really, I only had maybe 2-3 hours during the day, sometimes less than that, depending on the day, to do anything, because I was, traveling, carrying, whatever else I might be doing. So I would say that having that visual of realistically, where is my open time during a day to work on these goals was critical to being able to then plan what I was going to do, what those value added activities were going to be during that space.
Yeah, you're pointing at something really important, Angela, and that is, I would guess now, even on the days when you don't fill out a 15-minute increment sheet, you just now naturally, intuitively have a much better sense of what's realistic. That
absolutely,
if you go to dump a to-do list down, you go into the day realizing productively, really available to me, I have a handful of hours maybe. So what in the world am I thinking? Whereas before, like you said, you go into this mythical sense of the day of, I've got, 14 hours. Well, now by the time I eat, I shower, I drive here, I pick this up, I do that up, like you said, literally you may have 2 or 3 hours of discretionary time. And then if you just have a bottomless to-do list and you're just trying to jump on as many of those things as possible, and nowhere on that to-do list did you bother to say, oh, and here's something really important to me, and then move it onto that sheet, it never happens,
Right.
And so, I mean, you all actually, I wish I had before and after pictures like they have like on magazines, because you physically, your app, like all three of you are smiling big. You did not look that way when you first time we showed up for master class,
John, one thing I'll say is today is one of those days I didn't do the 15-minute increment, but I had 3 things I knew I needed to get done before this. And so I, in my brain, I said, I have to be ready at 11:40 to sign on to here. So I need to stop by 11:30. And in the past, I wouldn't have had even thought about that. It would have just been on my calendar, and then I would have been like, oh, shoot, it's 11:40. I got to go. So,
and that's going to I'm going to flag this again. That's going to bring me back to, in a moment, Susan's question of, should I be on the call tomorrow? Because she was, and you'll see, I'm just going to keep teasing you all with that in a moment. But Angela, you hit at the heart of it, where now you're naturally, intuitively living life better, whether you have the sheet in front of you or not.
Absolutely.
And that's fantastic. That's really what we hope for. We actually want to get you to the point where you're beyond the need for tools and education in some ways, because you've internalized the process to where it becomes your new norm for just how you do life. Okay, Susan, what about you? What were some of the tools where you kind of like went, oh, man, this made a difference?
For me, I would say the 7 minutes and the 15-minute increments. I used to always overschedule. I had a to-do list and there was 12 things on it, and so I would work diligently to get those things done, but then a week would go by, months would go by, years would go by, and I have never done anything toward my goals. Right. So another tool is reviewing the goals once a week to see if they match what you're doing. And that just made a huge difference. But then too, and it goes back to what Angela and Jerry were saying, is what's realistic. Knowing that you only have this much time, but knowing that you can get this done in 15 minutes. And what really blew my mind was doing that first thing in your micro actions of your project seemed to take on a snowball effect. And oh my goodness, do one thing, it took 5 minutes, and before I knew it, the whole project was done.
Yeah.
And it just snowballed. It was fantastic. And now to see that I'm actually working on goals. I think last week I reported that I worked on 3 out of 5 goals instead of just sort of getting all my to-do lists done.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
and that is truly miraculous, because one of the things that Susan wrote to me, I don't know, a year or so ago, it was a year and a half ago, when I had asked her for some feedback on her experience. She said, I had goals on my calendar, and at the beginning of the year, I just was marking out the date and putting a new date. So it's like 2015, 2000, same goal sheet, and literally not have touched any of them.
Why rewrite them?
Yeah.
They're the same.
In a year, nothing moving. And what you just heard her say is, last week, I worked on 2 or 3 goals last week, where she would go a year and not touch a goal. How many of you done that? Had the year-long goal sheet and literally not gotten? I've been there. I've done that. I know exactly what she's talking about. I'm going to pivot here for a moment to the thing I've been alluding to through the whole thing, where Susan asked whether she should be on this call. I'm going to say a word about that, and then I want to take a few minutes to tell you about, we're opening up registration for a new mastermind group today. It's open today. And I want to be sure I tell you about that. And then we'll hang on the call as we do till about 12:15 for whatever questions you have. But here's the thing, and it came out in Angela's story, and it came out in the question Susan asked me yesterday. Susan very humbly at the end of our mastermind group call said, John, do I need to be on this call? Because I'm not working the program. And I know what she meant by that. That meant she doesn't have a 7-minute life daily planner laying on her desk and she's opening it up every day and writing down things. And I said, no, absolutely you need to be on here. Because here's the thing. She has done what Angela described a moment ago and gave you a real life example of. She now has internalized the tools, internalized the principles to where it drives her action, whether she gets that planner out, whether she gets that 15-minute increment sheet out. Those tools, they are there to help you develop the thought process and the habit. They're the awareness check when you can't do it yet, you haven't internalized it. And you all had made the shift from, I talk about this in a much more simpler fashion of, we go through a cycle of know it, where we learn about something, we do it, we practice it for a while, and eventually we be it. That's not great English, but know it, do it, be it. You are no longer someone who is wanting to do time management. You're no longer someone who is, yes, you're working the tools where it's like something you kind of artificially know how to do. You now are a good time manager. It's part of your identity. It's how you function. You function at a higher level. To give one other analogy, like if you were learning how to play guitar, there's taking lessons, and then there's the guy who says, yeah, I can play some guitar. And then there's a person who is a guitarist. It's their identity. And you all, I'm officially graduating you to this publicly. You're there. Not that you've perfected it, because we're always learning and growing in that. But you really have made that process happen. And I think what I'm going to throw out here, and it's a good transition for me to talk about the mastermind group, and then we'll deal with questions people have. I think you all would say it would have been, because I know some of you were doing the webinars before you ever did a master class, but it really took being in a group and having that, first off, the reinforcement and the accountability to create the consistency so that you made it to here. Is that safe to say? Would y'all, and I'll let you say a quick word if you want to add any. Yeah, I love it. Three thumbs. I feel like it's Siskel, Ebert, and Ebert 2 or something. I got 3 thumbs up. Okay, here's some things I want you to please remember. Okay, did I say please enough? The stuff we've been talking about today, it's not just a bunch of theory. People were talking about actual things they do in their daily lives, and it's all doable by everybody on this call. And I want you to keep that in mind. And you have heard exactly what people like you, they did to level up their life. And like I said, this isn't a special gene Allyson and I have. Folks just like you have come feeling weary, come dealing with grief, depression, moves, caring for others, and they've been able to substantially change quality of life. And the principles are exactly the same regardless of your situation. I hope you can see that. And the bottom line of it is, I want you to all walk away inspired. Who's feeling inspired? Please let us know you're feeling inspired, because I think it's easy for you to look at Allyson and I and go, oh, well, they're authors and they're this and they're that. And, well, no, we're average folks. We're just people. And we wake up in the morning and go, oh, gosh, I've got to do this. And sometimes we're on our A game and sometimes we're not. But you can see anybody can do this. So what is all of this about? At the end of the day, all this stuff, this series we've done on priorities and principles and goals and a daily action plan, and what Jerry and Angela and Susan have been describing, what is it really ultimately about? To me, it's about transforming your life. It's not just about getting a few more things done well. I hope what you heard is each person here, they have a completely different quality of life. It's not just that they're getting more done. There's lots of ways to get more done. You want to be happy or joyous and feel good about what you're getting done. And permanently. Doesn't mean we don't backslide, but functioning at a higher level on a new norm, on a regular basis. Not, I get really organized for 3 months, and then a year from now, I'm wondering what happened, and I'm buying another class or another planner or another calendar. Finding freedom of time for the people and projects you love. One of the things that Angela didn't share, and I don't think I'm going to out her in some way, but one of her, I can remember one of her moments where she had a painful self-awareness of, oh my gosh, I missed this, this, and this, and I had no idea. And it was all related to family members. And now she's at a place where, no, she has freedom for projects and people she loves rather than neglecting those things. At a very practical level, it's about getting rid of distractions and procrastination, poor time management. I imagine most of you, that's what's brought you here, but I think most of you are looking for those bullet points above, and that's why you want to get rid of distractions. And in short, and real short, it's about creating a life with meaning. You want to know what you're doing makes a difference. You want it to be joyful. You want it to really be something that counts, because we get, as I said to someone yesterday, we get one shot at this, I don't want to waste any of it. So I'm not sure, I have some suspicions why many of you are here. I imagine you're motivated by, oops, I don't know how I did that. Let me back up. It may be because you're fed up with being tired and unfocused. Anybody in that boat? That gets old, going to bed weary and just going after things all day long and feeling like you're getting nothing done. It may be because you want to get back control of your life. And it just feels like a runaway train and you're just trying to hang on and half the wheels are off the track. Or you may just be trying to pump up volume on your productivity. Like your life may not be chaos, but you have this nagging sense of, I feel like there's a lot more I could experience out of life. I could enjoy it. I could be more efficient. I could be more effective. Either way, I hope you really get, and give me an amen or something. I'm a pastor, so I ask for an amen. But I hope you really get now what I said at the beginning of this webinar. And I'll repeat it really quickly, that transforming your life, it's not a superpower that certain people have. It's a skill set that people from widely different needs. I hope you saw how very divergent Susan and Jerry and Angela's situations were. They can use the same process though. And most people, some of you watch these webinars, you get a planner, you're good to go. But most people, if they don't want to be that guy described who gets a gym membership and shows up for a few weeks, but really nothing happens, you want to see substantial and you want to see lasting change. Most people need more than just tools and education. But if you get the more that we're going to talk about, then the tools and the education become a part of who you are. But all of this adds up to, and this is what I said at the beginning, this process can work for you. If you plan your work, you work your plan, it can happen. So here's the obvious question I got for you. How do you apply this process of this purpose, priorities, goals, and daily system so that you can create a life of meaning for you? And I feel like you have a choice. You can do it slow, use trial and error. You can use some of what we've taught you in the series. There's a lot there. There is a lifetime of homework in the videos we've done, no doubt about it. But you're going to have to do a lot of trial and error on your own. Or you can do it quickly and use a mastermind group process. That's going to ramp up your speed, if you will. And I wanted to pull a quote from one of my heroes. All right. That's me on a bad day. No, that's Albert Einstein. There's a great quote of his. He says, everything in life should be as simple as possible, but not simpler. And I put that in here because Allyson and I are trying to make this as simple as possible, but to not shortchange the process. And so if you're not moving forward substantially, then you may have a simple system, but it may be lacking some pieces. And it's a tenuous balance. But I love Albert, so I just had to squeeze him in there. I used to have a full-length Albert in my dorm room, in fact, in college. So what is this mastermind group with Allyson and myself? Let me explain what it is real quickly. It's really a complete system to give you all the support, not just the tools, not just the education. This is not a class. Yes, we'll teach you, and you'll probably learn and know more by the end of that than 90% of the folks you know about time management. But it's really about fully giving you the support you need to do these three things. Align your life with your priorities so you know clearly what it is you value, and you get your life in alignment with that so you're not fighting against your priorities. Reconnect with your purpose, because when you reconnect with your purpose, it is energizing, it is life-giving to you and to the people around you. And setting personal goals that you can be passionate about. Not just things that have to get done, but things that you go, wow, if I did that, that would be awesome. That would make me feel good or make this difference. Really goals, like not just getting things done as Susan described that a moment ago, where she said I worked on 2 or 3 honest to goodness goals. I wasn't just getting my task list done. Oops, I moved my cursor. And I think that out of the experience, and Allyson can chime in here in a minute, we have done video courses, we have done phone calls, we've done webinars, we've done personal coaching, we've done a lot of different models. I'm really starting to believe that a mastermind group is the fastest, most effective way to move from from a life that, to me, I describe as life depleting. I think the way of life that our three panelists described before they were doing this was life depleting. Living was dragging them down, to life giving, where living is lifting us up. And I honestly think it's the fastest way. I think it's the difference between, since I had Albert here, I also wanted to bring this in. I think being a mastermind group, it's the difference between getting from point A to point B in this, or you could do this, right? Like, okay, both of those are means of transportation. I got to toggle back here. We can do this to get point A to B. It'll get us there quickly, comfortably, enjoyably. Or we can do this and we'll putz around and it'll be noisy and you get gnats in your teeth and it's just not a fun experience. You will get from point A to point B. To me, a mastermind group is that kind of choice, you know? So what exactly, many of you may not even know what a mastermind group is. I'll describe it a little bit. What we do is we do 7 weeks where we meet. We have a 2-hour block. And this is going to be different than the master class that our 3 panelists were in. They were truly in a class, and then we had sort of an optional group time. But what we found is the group time is really where the advances took place. So what we're doing, we're almost flip-flopping it. We're going to give you enough education at the beginning of our time together to where you have the tools and things you need, but the bulk of the time now is going to be spent in process, helping you develop that self-awareness, catching you where you may not have it and can't see for yourself what you're doing wrong, and really encouraging one another through hurdles or yanking them out of your way. So it's going to be much more about doing the work together and less about what I call drag and brag education. That's where I drag you along and brag about everything I know about time management. We're going to tell you some things, but it's really going to be about, working through the material together and working on your very specific time issues. We limit this down to 20 registrants and usually wind up with, 8 to 10 people in a morning or evening session. There's a morning option. There's an evening option. You can swap between them. If one week you've got to make it on, an evening, another week you got to make it more, that's fine. You can bounce around whatever's convenient for you. We meet face-to-face online. What you just saw us doing, that's how we meet. We're in that gallery view. Everybody can see everybody. We bounce back and forth and work through everybody's stuff. As I said, it's once a week for a couple hours. I mentioned this already, brief educational, but we really focus on mentoring you through obstacles into execution. All the sessions are recorded, and we have a resource page for each group, has their own unique resource page, so that if we have, sometimes we'll run into an article or video or a worksheet that we reference, and we create a resource area for you to go in. And with each video, whatever is referenced, it's going to be there. This is really nice if you miss something, or maybe you get halfway through a call and you have to bail because the school called and your kid's sick and you got to go or whatever. But all the sessions are recorded, and you have perpetual access to that. The folks on this call, they were in 2 years ago. They can go today to that very same page. And that might be really funny for you to go back and watch and see, like, man, did I really ask them this? Like the progress you've made, you'd be like, holy cow. But that's true for everybody. There's nothing left out. I mean, it's really a complete system to bring somebody through the whole process. And I'm going to run over this rapid fire because you can go to the page in a moment. And Allyson, if you want to get the page link and put it in the chat, that would be really helpful. I have it, but I'm busy doing this. And I'll stop for questions in a minute. We're going to go down how to break free from distractions. so you can complete work. What many people report to us is they never get to the end of a task because they constantly get pulled down rabbit trails. So we teach you how to, and have some tools to help you learn how to break free from that. We also will be, and these aren't in order per se, we identify your strengths. And this is something we don't do in a webinar. And I'd love if you all give me nods or whatever around this. We do a thing called a Path Elements Profile. This is a series of questions, and you'll kind of find yourself assessed in one of 4 styles of profiles. You'll learn your strengths out of it, your weaknesses out of it, what energizes you, what depletes you. This I find to be one of the most helpful pieces, and we don't do it anyplace else. It's in these mastermind groups, the only place that you can get that. You'll identify your purpose and priorities very, very clearly. That gives you freedom to focus. We'll do time management best practices, tools, that stuff there to free you from busyness and all those time-wasting activities, just junk that sucks your day away. We'll help you craft actionable goals so that when you want to do 2 or 3 in 1 week, like Susan was talking about, you'll know what they are and you'll know what you need to do to act on them. And I love doing that because to me, this is what breaks people out of what I call kind of a status quo life and into something that they're really, really loving. Another thing that we haven't covered a whole lot recently in webinars is we go into the science of neuroplasticity. And that's really the secret to this lasting change. As we were talking about the baseline shift for each person on the call today, what's happened is through repetition and conscious reflection, they literally have rewired their brain where they respond to life differently. And because it's rewired, it's like they have a whole new operating system and they're going to operate on an ongoing basis at a higher level because of that. And then at the end, after you've done, when we get down to the end of the 7 weeks, we'll talk to you about, well, how do you live beyond the 7 weeks? You know, like, how do you carry this forward? Because the worst thing we want to see happen, the last thing we want to see happen is you find yourself 4 months from now, 6 months from now going, oh, my life's a mess. I need to find another time management class. You don't need to. Everything you'll have is in this. We want to set you up for ongoing success with it. If you wonder how much it'll cost you, Allyson and I, our coaching is $200 an hour, and that would be a piece. So if we were meeting with you 14 hours, you spend almost $3,000 to have our time like that, the two of us like that. And the knowledge we're sharing, we have done books, we have done seminars, we have worked literally for years creating the material. So, we've done the work for you, putting in the hours and the cost, and we've systematized this down to 7 weeks. And for the next 48 hours, we have an early bird registration. You can save $500. And what all that equates to is you can secure your seat today. Classes start April 19th and run for 7 weeks after that, every Thursday, morning or evening option. That's a 3-payment plan you can do, and it's $347. Or you can do a one-time cost of $997. You'll save a little bit. Either way, that price is going to go up $500 in 2 days. This is an early bird price. We haven't emailed it out to anybody yet. We will be later today, sending something out about that, but you all are the first to see it. Come Thursday at midnight, that'll all jump up $500. We got a bonus here for you where we want to give you lifetime access to our 7-minute video library. As many of you know, the webinars, we archive those each week, and we have over a couple dozen in there, and it's growing every week. It's like the Netflix of time management and productivity. You get a free library card to that with this, if you will. We're throwing that in as a bonus. And then I have one, Allyson, I'm just throwing this in because I want to do it because I have fun with this. I mentioned I don't coach, but I love to coach. So for people who order today, if they order after the webinar before 1 o'clock today, I will personally do a one-on-one with them. I'll call them up. I would encourage them for us to do that after they kind of work on their priorities and purpose and goals a little bit. We can do it wherever in that 7 weeks they want, but I think if they get in a little bit, then we can really make the most of that. But I'll give folks a free half hour of my time, and that's just for folks who are on the call today, because I really love when people take action. You guys took action to be here today, and I want to honor that. And if you take action to invest in yourself and do this, I really want to honor that. And odds are, because I talk a lot, it'll run over 30 minutes most likely. But I'll give you at least a free half hour. And if we get to going, we might be a little bit more than that. So that's where we are. To sum up, if you want to be moving out of that overwhelm to living a life of meaning and you love, and you don't want to waste a bunch of hours doing all the learning curve we did, you don't want to go through trial and error, you really want a complete system, you want people to help you step by step, this is exactly what Allyson and I have done to live out our life purpose. And we know it can work for you. I wish somebody had taught me this stuff a long, long time ago. I would have never had to look at my daughter who was 3 or 4 years old and tell her, no, I don't live at the church. I would have given a lot not to have had to say that to my child. Fortunately, I did learn this stuff, and now we have an amazing, amazing relationship. In fact, she was texting me as we started this call. That's why I had to turn off. She was out of class and excited about a possibility we're working on for this summer for a summer trip together. And if I had known this stuff before, there's a lot of regrets that I could have avoided. I mentioned that I went through depression twice pretty heavily. And one of those depressions, my wake-up call for me was I was standing in my living room and I said, my kids don't really know truly who I am. They know a depressed version of me. And I wasn't abusive, but I was at a place where they got a pound of retribution for an ounce of infraction. I was just so threadbare, and I would snap at them unfairly. And I had some amends I made later, where I went back to my kids later and had to look at them and say, I'm sorry that I was an unhappy dad for a period of your life and that you paid for it. You know, by God's sheer grace, they don't really remember it or feel it that way, but boy, I sure did. And if I could trade something to not have had that experience with them, yeah, I'd do it over again in a heartbeat. If I could have spent 7 weeks with some people, resetting my priorities, so that wasn't their experience of me, I absolutely would have done that. So I think, that about wraps it up. Again, it's you can secure your seat. We only have 20 of them. Actually, we don't have 20 because we had a couple seats go before we even opened registration, people who heard we were doing this and wanted in. But you can, for $347, you can secure that. We do have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you get in there and you go after 2 or 3 weeks, that John Arnold, I don't know what he was talking about. I don't think that's going to happen. That's why I have no problem saying, hey, if in 30 days you want out of this, that's cool. You just tell us and we refund, whatever you've paid up to that point. It's going to work. So I don't have any problem extending that out there. Oh, so here's what you need to do. If you want to join, you need to go to this link, make your selection. You'll see, it says $997, $347. When you click on this, you're going to you're going to find it is further discounted by Allyson, which I didn't know she was going to do. That's really cool. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We are going to need to wrap up. We are running over a bit, but I do want to see, Allyson, if we had questions, and or also I want to know if y'all are, first off, can we all thank our panelists? What? Everybody thank those panelists. I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing my screen. I forget where it is. Where is that? Not stop video. That would be a bad thing. Allyson, can you give me a little direction on, there it is, stop sharing. I had something over it. Okay, I'm back to panel view. Questions, anything we need to lift up? Oh, yay, some of you said, being a panelist, my pleasure. Thank you. No, man, thank you all. I'll tell you what, for being utterly unscripted and nobody prepped, man, you guys are like webinar rock stars. You're going to shame me out of a job. I've been doing this for years now, and I'm like, dang, these people are naturals. So y'all really did. You make me proud as my mastermind group. So anybody want to add anything, or Allyson, you want to add anything?
Well, we have not done this before, John, and I'm already seeing some people, because I'm seeing the orders come in, which is exciting. But it's something that is really, every time I'm in a class, it changes my life. And so the floor is open. I don't really want to close it up. We've got about 3 minutes left. It's absolutely been amazing. I know all these people because we've been in the class together. So John, I'm going to turn it back to you. I definitely want people to register. Remember that $100 is only until 1 o'clock. So and I know people are doing it because I can see it, the orders coming through, or the registrations, I guess I should say. So they've got 34 more minutes to save $100. John, why don't you thank everybody and wrap us up in the next couple of minutes?
Yeah, you betcha. Well, I hope people enjoyed this. And if you want, I think it would be good for us to do this every once in a while. Again, I am really, really thankful for you all jumping in and being willing to share. It's a scary thing to go on camera. And y'all did it with poise and grace. And I think your stories are inspiring for people. It inspires me around the work of 7-Minute Life. I don't know if there's anything any of you want to say to somebody on the fence. You're welcome to, not obligated to if you don't want to. But if you do, just kind of raise your hand up if there's any last word you want. All right, Jerry's got her hand up. And Angela, I don't think she meant to raise her hand up.
Yes, I did.
Angela, why don't you go first real quick?
Okay, I was just going to say real quick, if anybody's like me who gets planners or what have you and spends so much time trying to work the planner, and so you waste time trying to use the planner exactly the way it needs to be, and then you get frustrated if you can't do it exactly the way it is. The one thing that's great about Allyson and John is they tell you how to use the planner for your situation. And the easiest example I can give is the 5 before 11. I was like, I'm not going to do this until I know I can get everything in before 11. And I got to this point through the mastermind class that I was able to sit there and go, I'm looking at my 15-minute increment. Come 3 o'clock, I have no time between 3 and 11 to do anything worthwhile. And so I changed it to say 5 before 2, because realistically for me, my open time was 2 o'clock. So if you're one of those people who has to use something exactly the way it is, let it go. It is okay. Just give yourself that grace to say, you know what, I need to have this planner work for me. And Allyson and John are great at helping you figure out what that looks like.
And I think you hit a word, and Angela, I'm almost surprised you didn't say it till now. When Angela, a year or so ago, when I was asking her for how her experience was, the big word that came out again and again was she found the ability to give herself grace. And she was in a graceless existence, and that's a painful, guilty, failure place to be. And she found the ability to give herself grace. So that's, yeah. And by the way, that 5 before 11, it's more like guidelines, you know.
Yes.
It's not long. So, but Jerry, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know that it may seem like a lot of money. I'll be honest with you, it may seem like a lot of money, but I bought the book and I bought the planner to be supportive of John when he first told me he was going to be my sister thing. I'll buy the book.
A pity vote.
Really, like you support your sibling, you know. And so I bought the book and I bought the planner and I read the planner. I was like, oh, cool. But it really is the mastermind group and being authentic in the mastermind group. You know, like right now, there really is no need for me to script my day 15 minutes at a time because I'm not employed, but that was critical at one time. So like Angela said, you know, the 5 before 11, you know, 5 before 11 at one point while being laid off became, yeah, I really do have to get out of bed and get dressed. Rock bottom. So I was authentic about the group. I was like, I got out of bed, I got dressed, I went to the unemployment office and said, how do I enroll? You know, the group gives you a lot of grace. And they're like, that's great, Jerry. You know, because it was hard for me to admit I was unemployed and I was going to file for unemployment. So bringing your authentic self to the mastermind group, people, we found, we just met each other where they were at, and people will get to know you. So like yesterday, we're really great at saying, well, Susan, for 2 years, we've been listening to you say you value this. So is that really a stumbling block? This doesn't change. With Angela, we hadn't heard from her for a while because her life, bunch of changes in it. And then when she came back, we could point out to her that her whole affect was much more, while she wasn't necessarily where she needed to be, we could see she was further along than she had been. So if you will bring your authentic, so what I'm trying to say is the mastermind group really will make a difference. Just getting the materials and reading them and going at it alone. I just don't know that anybody has I don't know anybody who has the discipline to make that successful. And it's great because you get to know the people in your class and they can see progress or they can see answers where you can't.
Yeah.
So I would, I think it's well worth the investment.
Mm-hmm. There's some days when you think you have just failed. I just bombed. And then somebody will say, well, Susan, did you do this? And I went, well, yeah. Well, did you do that? I went, well, yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, I've got wins. And you're just so excited, and it changes everything. The other people in your group bring so much to the table. Yeah. And you bond with these people. You end up with lasting friendships, and you keep each other accountable. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Cool. Yeah, it's killing me Jean couldn't be here today. We're all going to have to be like, man, you missed the party. So she definitely watched the. And Jean is a gem. She would have brought so much. We're going to have Jean come on sometime. So
she is an accountability warrior because we'll be telling her about something. She'll be like, but what did you do this week? Mm-hmm. Or if you do well in what you didn't get done this week, she'll be like, and so what's next week going to hold?
Yeah,
so right. Accountability warrior.
She just tells me sometimes, she's like, John, I'm putting on your list, call the doctor.
Oh, I know.
That's a true story. She did just that.
She did. She told John, you're going to the doctor this week.
And it saved my life. I found out I had AFib. And and it's because Jean said, call the doctor. And I would not gonna mess with Jean. Well, thank you all so much. This has been fantastic. We've run over a few minutes. I'm gonna let you go. Just a reminder, you can go to that link up until 1 o'clock. You can get that additional $100 off. You can get a half hour free with me, plus that bonus of the webinars. There's also, I didn't list, I just put, 7 weeks and all the resources. If you go to the order page, you'll actually see listed out, there's some books, there's some things you get. A class won't start till April 19th. Some of those resources you'll be able to access fairly quickly. But I would register today if you can at all, because as I said, we'll have 20 seats. And I know a couple of those went before we opened the door. We had some pre-sales, and I know some people have jumped on while we're talking. So that 20 is going to fill, I think, quickly. All right. Well, have a fantastic time. I am so grateful. And to my panelists, I'll see you all Monday.
Hey, John,
we'll see you Tuesday. What's that?
John, we're getting a question that is the cutoff time 1 p.m. Central, and it is. It's in 30 minutes. It's not 1 p.m. Pacific.
Oh, that was a smart question. Yeah.
If you want to save the extra $100, you've got to do that within 30 minutes.
Yep. And get my coaching call. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna leave it at that, Allison. We all good?
Thank you.
Bye now. Everybody
Bye.
have a blessed week. Look forward to seeing you hopefully in a mastermind group. Bye now.
Bye. Great time.
That was fun. Thank you all. Productivity party. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Bye-bye.
Bye.